there's a full audience here. It's very nice that after such interesting discussions, we're getting back to earth, so to speak. We're going to talk about payments. It's evident that today no one is thinking about payments as something invisible, a back office function. Especially in the last 2 years, there were so many conversations about settlements and payments that actually I was surprised that payments wasn't the word of the year last year, I mean. Evidently, payments is a very serious structural part of the economy. The national payment system is actually an element, an indispensable element, which is indispensable for the economic development of the country. So, because the national payment system includes the payment system of the Bank of Russia and a couple of other subjects such as payment systems operators and the electronic platform operators, so is actually a full-fledged area which must be regulated. And we have here Alla Bakina with us, the director of the Department of the National Payment System. Alla and her team work with standards, accessibility, but also other important things such as the technological development of the infrastructure and its stability. So today, for the last 2 years, actually the market faced a lot of challenges, which actually are very important. So we had to work on transitioning towards the Russian software and other related topics. Of course, there are a lot of efforts was spent on these tasks. So we actually have the goal of efficiency. Today we're talking about AI, and such topics are actually, I know that after conversations with other banks, that these are the most important ones. Alla, what is in the focus of the attention of the regulator? What tasks or maybe challenges? Please share this with us. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and for asking these questions. I'm very happy to participate in this discussion, to be part of such a wonderful event organized at this stage. I absolutely agree that the development of the national payment system is a driver, is a core of changes in the economy. It's not a secret, it's not in vain that the national payment system is compared with the blood vessels of the economy. We all well understand that if something goes wrong with the payments or they stop, everyone starts to feel that, beginning with the governmental structures and all of us, the citizens. So, in the focus, it's actually part of our all strategic level documents. So we are trying to look at this in this way, so that all the needs of all the participants to be satisfied. It's citizens and business. This also includes banks and the state, of course, I mean in the payments area. So the development of the technology, the development of the infrastructure, of course, adds to that, adds to the stability and the competitiveness on this market. It stimulates the appearance of new products and services, everything that is aimed at the ultimate consumers. We're all rooting for the competition on the product level and on the documents level. As far as our role as the regulator is concerned, we are aimed at the following. This was part of our regulation and part of our supervision. and coordination of all participants. What I mean is the seamlessness of the whole infrastructure, stable of the whole infrastructure, and also its openness. If we go deeper into that, the main tasks which we're working on, and we're working together with the market, with all other participants, what is directed at the sustainability of the payments infrastructure. This is expansion of RTGS, our Bank of Russia payment system, so that it works together, not just as separate modules. And if we talk about seamlessness, as I said, the efficiency of using technologies and standards for through and through processing of payments. This is ISO 20022. Let us go a bit more into detail, expanding the operating time for the payment system of the Bank of Russia, right? We know that right now the payment system is working up to 18 hours, 19 hours, and then it's closed. So how is it going to look like in the near future? So what we want to do is to make all of the systems and services work with the lowest possible 15 or 30 minute break, which is required for the end of day procedures. So we have the experience of such work in the retail area, the quick payment system, which works 24 hours a day. And there's also the line where the calendar day ends, but the operating date still hasn't. So we need to align that, and we have experience for that. This expands the opportunities for the clients, for the credit organizations, and banks are our clients. This will allow, considering the geographical broadness, give us the opportunity to make payments regardless of the time of day and regardless of the date. Well, this sounds very positive, but there's a difference. Calendar day, operating day. You said that, of course, we look at the documents that are readily available and openly available, and we like this product, but there are some nuances that needs to be explained. For example, there is the next day that comes, physical calendar day, in the East, and the client has made payments in the last payment period, but physically, when will he have the money? We have the notion where there's something not quite clear. We need to think about introducing the valuation date, which is in the international practice. Maybe have you thought about that? Yes, we have, and we are discussing that. Let us try to understand what the valuation date is. The valuation date and its use in the international practice is about the fact when payments are going on for a couple of days, and it's important where the performance of obligations actually are exacted. So when the buyer needs the money to be credited at a specific date according to the contract. So we usually don't talk about long-term transactions, especially in the Russian space. Monetary flows, it's not about days. The majority of services work online or with 15, 30 minute delays. So it's determined in the legislation. So the bank needs to debit the money from the account of the buyer and credit them to credit them to the seller on the same day or the next day. So when the performance of the obligations It's about the time when the client actually sees the money on their account. And it's this fact, as we see it. It's, it's about the negotiations, the agreements between the customer and the seller. And the payment system is just an element of the infrastructure that makes the processing of this payment possible. Of course, it works based on the specific rules in terms of the time. Of course, it's well-known information. The banks and the clients know that. So what new can we make here? What we have is that the time, as we said, the operating day and the calendar day may be different, but that's an objective reality that has to do with the fact that our big country has 11 time zones, and that contributes to that difference between East and West. And also there are procedures of the end of day where the settlement must take place, rebalancing or getting a loan or a deposit. So in the information that we give to our customers, the banks, and they can bring it then to their own customers, physical and legal entities, the whole information is available in the calendar day and the performance time, and also information on the operating day. It's all there. So we'll need to have a look at where, in terms of the contract, is it the cooperation with us or with you and your customers, what needs to be done? But there are no boundaries here. We already can do that. Clear, that's a very important explanation. That system is working 24/7, but with that, you need to have to take a look at what is in the contract. Alla, actually today, there are a lot of representatives of banks, Russian banks and banks of our friendly countries. I would like to make a short survey and ask the colleagues about what wakes them up at night in the context of payment system, the settlement system, what the priorities are, and maybe difficulties that they may have. So what is in the focus of their attention in their respective organizations? So we have the QR code for this voting, and we may begin. Let's just write down one or two words of the things that wake you up at night or that trouble you. We now have the tech cloud. Yeah, the bigger the size, the more people voted for that. So the leaders are changing. I see that one of the leaders is the trans-border payments, economy, speed, cybersecurity, sanctions, AI, speed again. I think that's it. And reliability and trans-border payments. Yes, trans-border payments, because it is very sensitive, I'm not going to discuss it publicly, but we will agree that it's one of the problem zones. So one of the leaders here have been set, speed and economy. Yeah, actually, they correspond to what our market and us as the regulator and our banks is the regulations and the standards. About the standards, Alla, I think you mentioned two of the projects at the start. One is 24/7 and the standards. Do I get it right? We're talking about ISO 20022 which the market is nearing in the Russian context and in the international context, 2022. It's clear for specific reasons we had to replace the imports and other matters which changed the priorities. So it's clear that today, what's the picture in terms of me as the market participant? We are working with foreign banks and also in the ruble area. Some of them are present here, but the international payments are going on in rubles in SWIFT format. It's SWIFT RUR, but still, it's on November 22, it transferred to the ISO format with a deferral for the ruble space and for countries that work with it. And in Russia, with the central bank's plans and our own plans, it's still not a priority for us. What do you think? Do we need to change something here, or to move in our own mode? How the central bank sees this? Thank you. This is actually a very important topic. Frankly, I would say that we haven't changed our plans. Initially, when we started to talk about this and when we determined this as a priority, we set our own speed because there are so many changes mentioned here, and a very big number of participants need to do specific work. So from the beginning, when we set the standards together with the market, at the earliest stages, we involved banks and the participants in this work to be able to get acquainted with them deeper and more efficiently, to understand how to rebuild our own processes. So we're moving in this direction, even regardless of this current situation of Russia and our financial community. It's actually part of the world's economy and the country itself. So moving in the joint area, but we're moving in the same area, but with different speeds. We need to do this in a specific way that's convenient for our market, but the general way is the same. The general direction is the same. So the need to unify and standardize is there, and the international community, of course, adopts that faster and earlier. But for the CIS countries that work in the ruble zone, there was a deferral, right? They said that temporarily they can work, but it's available just for this specific space using the old formats. But at any moment, the situation can change. And we, with SWIFT, faced that, and all of the possible risks were realized, and we need to think about that, and we accept that. So how we determined it and agreed with the market, we're starting our transition from the payment system of the Bank of Russia. But even within our system, we're doing it in two stages, because the participants are different. The scale of changes is different. It's important to take into consideration because it's also about risks. On the first stage, we're going to a convertible format so that all participants could work with it seamlessly, those who are ready and that have make the necessary changes, and those who need a little bit more time. And then we will determine the final date, the date of the final transition. If I talk about the time, the first stage, it's 2020, the next year, and after it ends with a certain deferral, we'll discuss this with the banks, there will be the final date. And the third step is going outside of the payment system for other participants. But I will say again that all the standards, all of the methodology, all of the rules are there. They're accepted. They're accessible. So this information can already be considered by everyone, and you can all align with that. So those who can move faster, they should do it, and those who have other priorities can also still work from the point of view of the central bank. Thank you. Thought about the standards, thought about the economy. Is there a plan in the near future to have IBAN? Because our Russian payment system is very nice, but it's very complex. So many letters, so many words, so many problems. Is there anything done in this area? I will remind you that the Russian standard IBAN was registered in 2022. It's available. And the banks still have this opportunity. I mean, those who work with their foreign counterparts, if they actually need that, they can use it. And we prepare specific recommendations. But in the Russian perimeter, you mean? Yes, exactly. I would say that it's not a one-sided question. IBAN is just another reference that links together the other things. So it all remains. Especially considering the fact that strategically we're going into ISO 20022, which is in the structure, it's also includes IBAN. So if someone needs that, we'll have this opportunity and capability. But to do some other general change, to introduce IBAN, we don't see any request for that, and we don't have an evident advantage for that. We are ready to discuss this with the market if necessary. Alla, because the payment system of Sber is rather big, we're looking at the speed that you're developing with and having the conversation with the market. We try to move on, to expand, to have some new functionalities introduced. We analyze the work of our banks. And using this opportunity, I would like to say that we had a very difficult transfer towards the Russian infrastructure. At the beginning of the year, we did that, but with the hardship. So, and we had we learned some lessons. If we talk about the speed, of course we work without credit risk. It's the payment against liquidity, and this is also about the additional spending and lower speed. So I have two questions. Are there any tools for the central bank that it has to simplify working with liquidity on the interbank market? And then I'll ask the second question. Of course, there are instruments. Again, we're working on the request of our participants, so we have well-known instruments in the monetary policy area, and I know banks are using them very actively. One of the participants is the Treasury, and they had the initiative a year ago. We supported actually this initiative because we're talking about the budgetary funds, about the creation of the mechanism that would help manage this liquidity more efficiently. Within this year, with the stock exchanges and the settlement depository, there was the mechanism for ending these transactions in the payment system of the Bank of Russia. We did that, and the effect for the Federal Treasury is clear. So they collected in one place the liquidity, and they are more efficient and fast to work with the results of these transactions. Also, there are advantages for the banks. The banks that participated in this pilot project, actually this week, we started to pilot this at the specific transactions, how this works. We see that the banks also have less need for liquidity, thanks to the netting mechanism, and also the fact that they're using funds on the correspondent accounts, and they have additional mechanisms and tools to manage this liquidity, including by using liquidity pools that we already have in our payment system. So let us look at that. If there are suggestions which the banks see, say to decrease the risk, we know that it's zero risk usually. Let's use this opportunity, and so if this raises the efficiency of our participants, we can only welcome that. Yeah, I actually wanted to say that we're thinking in this area, and we're planning to study the matter of re-registering the payment system of Sber with the credit risk. You know, it's a big process. We need to be very careful with that. There are limits, reliability matters. We think it will make the life of the banks quite easier. The transactional activity, for example, based on the inter-day loan, which will be given out by Sber, I think it's one of the ways to reach the result, to solve the matters that the people just voted for example, speed and the reliability. I hope that the regulator will support us, train us, correct us, make it easier for us. You know, the methodology of the payment system, it's about working with the risks. There are international standards, there are our internal requirements. You're quite right that all the nuances and the details are important, so we're ready to discuss that and to see what lacks right now. We're also always open for dialogue, so we can discuss that quite openly. Today, the conference is held under the aegis of blockchain AI, and we must touch upon this topic in our dialogue. So, you know, the payments is a very conservative area. There are fields, there are statutory documents in theory, and in practice we understand that we're all working with many deviations in this area, and there should be a balance between among these things. There's STP, and you have to return everything, but then the client is not very happy. It's sort of striking a balance. So the AI could maybe help us, because if a person is looking at some sort of deviations, then they have to make a decision, go to a couple of places. What if this is a multi-agent network that look very fast at all of the previous cases and then decides, or somehow else? I want to ask the audience and then ask you, what do you think about AI, the use of AI, considering everything we've heard? What do you think, if it's applicable in this area, or in which areas it is applicable, especially in areas having to do with payments or with settlements? Where would you start testing AI? Or maybe you already have started testing AI. Which areas? Again, please scan this QR code and answer. give us your suggestions. The processes related to the settlements. We ourselves are trying. No, we already have the results. Correcting mistakes, compliance with big letters. These are the leaders. Routing, compliance. So working with deviations. That's it. Yep. Routing, working with fraud. Checking budgetary payments, specifying the details. I think actually almost all of these payment process were mentioned. I actually it's a very good sign, because we need to move on, and decreasing costs. It's in the salaries part of the balance sheet. So if the model is very precise, then the quality of correcting mistakes also must be rather high. Alla, I will now ask you, where does the regulator look in this specification? You have plans, maybe, or projects in using AI in the payments context. Can you share this? The artificial intelligence is one of the technologies that finds its way into our lives for an efficient use. But if we look back, we will see that the payments area, payment systems, is the area where all of the new technologies, everything that appeared, everything is being tried and tested, and the most efficient things stay and begin to be used. No one is thinking about the contactless payment as a new technology. It seems like it's already under our skin, so to speak. I think AI has very big future. It's like looking for an efficient model and areas where inside even the payment sphere it is used. We as a regulator, and it's our job actually, to support new technology. Here it is important to give the market the opportunity to adapt, to set the use practice and the experience as well. We are very attentive about that. We don't go too deep into the very active regulation to set up barriers or write down specific rules, because we don't want to be in the way of the progress. The market is very flexible, very adaptive. We're very interested in what is going on, and even the documents that we as a regulator have published, the ethics code, our report, and the main areas of the financial technologies for the year 2027. So our position in terms of the AI, I would formulate it as a risk-oriented approach and technological neutrality. So we need to have practice. We are not an exception. We want to use the best practices too. But it's a more of a limited approach here to use it as an aid, but without decision-making function passed on to it. Well, understand it very well. If we do this, there can be unthinkable consequences. So using AI for analytics, for working with big data, for looking for specific laws or deviations, or having signals or maybe hints, which it will take more time for the human brain to process, and no one will, I think, would argue that it's the future. We see a lot of cases, a lot of examples, and children even are using AI for their homework, but there's also a separate part. You said it right. The balance is very important, and the use of every technology. It's about the payment system and for everything else. I think those of you who were here when Mr. Greff spoke, I actually liked it very much when he showed the slide with the fact that the regulators are also going in the way of adoption. But the regulators always lag behind a little bit because they are more conservative, and they have to be. And we just heard this confirmation, the illustration of these words. But it's nice that you're looking there and that you're ready to watch the market practices. And I would like to say a couple of words about where we're moving in this area. We're looking at all of the processes because we really need to understand the value versus risk versus cost. We think that in the payments area, there is the area where it can be used, starting from the onboarding, which may be difficult, the Russian onboarding for the foreign participants. We're looking at working with the deviations, and frankly, we're looking at reconciliation and some other things. I'm not talking about the use of robots. Everything is doing that. But when we need to talk about decision making, I will agree that there must be models that must be very well trained, that must have high precision. But I think everything, when we give everything, we will outsource everything to the AI. We will track its development. I think that in a year or two, we'll discuss this topic in a quite different context. Absolutely, I think in a year or two, we might have a combination of people in their avatar, so we'll see the format where we will have these panels. But, it's expanding. Even during this year, we have seen considerable changes and considerable process. The speed, not just in payments, but in life, it increases. We have so much information. We need to be on the same page with others, and these technologies help us do that. So we need to learn to use them, to use this technology in the correct way for the good of the humankind. That's what we're working for. Alla, I'd like to thank you one more time at the end of the year, this very difficult time, to join us. Thank you for being open to the opinions of the market, and also for very interesting observations and innovations that you told us about. Thank you very much.